Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you are listening to Job Search Radio. Job Search Radio is a 30-minute conversation with a subject matter expert about an element of job search that I think will help you find work more quickly. And my guest on this show, Marcus Ronaldi, is someone I met at a conference about a year and a half ago. It was a conference of recruiting firms for an organization called NPA Worldwide. It's a network of recruiters that work with one another to help do cooperative. And when I met Marcus, he was an interesting guy to me and had an interesting perspective on a lot of things related to job search. So we're going to be talking about ways that people sabotage themselves in the job search. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hang in there and join me for the ride, and let's sing along.
Are you looking for a new job or interested in leveling up? Job Search Radio is your go-to resource for insider tips on job hunting and growing your career. Here's your host, Jeff Altman.
So my guest on this show is Marcus Ronaldi, who started his career in sales before moving into recruiting. He's done sourcing and recruiting for Google, WebEx, Cisco, and a variety of others before starting MarcusRonaldi.com. Marcus, welcome to Job Search Radio. Great to have you on board.
Thank you very much. It's great to be on the show.
Thank you. And we're going to be talking, folks, about self-sabotage and the kind of things that job hunters do to hurt themselves in their job search. Marcus, why do you think that happens? Why do people sabotage themselves in their search?
I think there are a lot of people with a very 20th century mindset when it comes to looking for a job. I remember back in the 1980s, if you wanted to find a job, you basically printed up a bunch of resumes, and the more stores and the more doors you knocked on, better off you would be. What has happened in the last 20 years with the internet is that people have this sense of taking that same approach when it comes to finding a job, which I will explain how that could be very detrimental very, very, very quickly.
You mean you don't like the idea that people should be spamming their resume to the Western Hemisphere?
Correct. And first off, if you see a position and you're completely not qualified and not a fit, it is not a good idea at all to send your resume for that position at all.
But they may have something else for me, you know?
Correct.
Like maybe something else.
Right. But the problem is once you get sent in, you show up as you might be a geologist and you applied for a position as a conductor, and you're completely not a fit, and so your resume gets marked as something that is not a fit, so that's not good at all.
Right, and I remember when we were talking before the show, you mentioned that if someone submits their resume several times and hits rejection, they get kind of marked in the applicant tracking system as a serial applier or something to that effect, which causes them to look askance at your candidacy.
Correct. Well, both at Google and at Cisco, if someone applied multiple times or dozens of times to similar positions, during the interview process, they list all of the positions they ever applied for, and if they applied for positions that were not a match for their background, that was considered a negative. So even if you're a developer and you see 20 positions with eBay, it's not a good idea to apply to all 20 of those positions at all.
Because your background doesn't fit all 20 of those jobs, of course.
Correct. Or you just simply show up in the system 20 times, and the person who reviews it soon thinks, wow, this guy's resume shows up again. and that provides a negative connotation.
But the one good thing that comes out of that is you give them an opportunity to practice, what I call the eye roll, where you kind of look up and off the side and go, oh, man, this guy again? And so it's a good eye exercise.
Correct. But what happens is, now that I work independently, if I might have some postings out there, and what happens is, if the same person shows up again and again and again, eventually I will mark it as somebody who over-applies, and that means that his resume is probably everywhere, and there's not a whole lot I can do for him. So, and that's something that is definitely a self-sabotage that people aren't aware of. One general piece of career advice that you hear over and over again is looking for a job is a full-time job. And what people misinterpret that as applying for jobs is a full-time job, which are two totally different things. So
explain the difference to my audience, please.
Okay. So if you're sitting there and you're looking for a job, if you take a list of all the jobs you've ever gotten in your life and write down how you got that position. There are many different ways, there are many different methods to finding positions. Networking, applying for jobs on company websites, through recruiters, through job fairs, and I would definitely say networking is probably your best method to find a position. And even networking with recruiters. But what happens is people will lose their job and suddenly go on Indeed, go on Simply Hired, go on Monster, go on Career Builder, and basically set up alerts, and they will sit there, and every day they will send their resume without fail to every position that might be or might not be a fit at all. And
without tailoring your resume to that job description, I'll add in.
Correct. They are sending a cover email, cover letter, which starts off, Dear Sir or Madam, my unique skill set is blah, 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 blah. There's no connection between what the job is looking for and what the information you're providing. So,
and I'll go one extra way. I was on Quora this morning, and there was a question that someone
great website,
posed.
By the way.
I agree with you. Someone posed this question like, which one do you prefer, filling out an online application for a half hour every time or doing a one-click apply? Now, everyone's going to say one-click apply, right? And I'm sure many of you try that one-click apply, except like that generic resume, you're sending in a LinkedIn profile that doesn't fit either.
Correct.
So what else do people do to sabotage themselves in their search?
Well, simply another one is resume formatting. One of the things is where they start off with they're applying for a position for somebody who they're looking for around 5 years experience. They start off with my 30 years of experience and then include something that is 7 levels above what the position is looking for, or resumes that include GPAs that are less than stellar.
That 2.4 index isn't going to do it, huh?
Correct. Unless your resume or unless your GPA is well above 3.4 or above, you really do not need to include your GPA. It's amazing the amount of low GPAs that I see. If you have a 2.7 GPA, you never have to bring it up. And also, you do not need to, unless you're applying for a position as a ride operator at Six Flags, you really don't need to include your high school graduation date or when you started high school. Neither
you get
of
those resumes,
are that
huh?
important. Yeah, you get a lot of resumes that include a lot of irrelevant information. They simply provide a very bad autobiography of someone, and it's not relevant to what you're looking for.
Now, you and I primarily do experienced people.
Correct.
And I'm thinking about for the entry-level person who's trying to pad a resume. I could see them sticking in the high school stuff.
Well, I mean, entry-level, when you say like somebody who just graduated college or somebody who's still in college?
Just graduated college.
Unless it was an exceptional high school, I probably wouldn't include it. But you need to be, like during your college years, you really need to be proactive about creating experiences that are relevant and that you can leverage to get into the type of career that you want, even if it's outside of your major. A lot of times people will say like, oh, what am I going to do with my English major? What am I going to do with my geology major? But in reality, often you don't end up working in whatever your major is. But if you do other things, like for example, when I was in college, I helped with the Speakers Bureau. We would bring in high-profile speakers to Penn State. And that got me to interact with a lot of like Ben and Jerry, Spike Lee, and a lot of these other types of people. And I was able to put something on my resume beyond being a shoe salesman. So when you're in college, you need to think proactively, what can I do to be exceptional?
Folks, not too long ago, I did an interview with a person who's in career services at High Point University in North Carolina, who goes through, I'd say from high school through graduation, the kind of things you can be doing to prepare for your first job upon graduation from college. It's a great show to listen to, lots of concrete things to do, including stuff to do if you didn't do that kind of prep work until graduation. So great show to listen to. It's maybe 2-3 shows ago, so go back into the show notes, into the list of shows. I'm sure you'll be able to find it. And folks, we're going to be back with more from Marcus in just a moment, but first my Job Search Insider tip, which is about branding and helping you to brand yourself for your career. Now, most people, when they think of branding, they roll their eyes up as much as that HR person I mentioned earlier who sees the same resume 10, 15 times and goes, why is this person doing this? But in point of fact, if you think of branding as a career exercise and how important it is to begin now, what you're doing is creating an image for yourself in a market larger than your immediate universe, so that when you need to change jobs, not just now, but for many years to come, people know of you. And I'll just give you an exercise for demonstrating the importance of it. A lot of folks I come into contact with have been doing great work where they are, but the only people who know about it are the ones in their immediate circle at work. So ask yourself this question. If I was fired tomorrow, how many people would know about me and the work that I do who could be valuable in finding a position for me? For most of you, that's going to be fewer than 10 people. And you need to make a larger universe for yourself of individuals so that at a time that you have a need, there are folks you can reach out to who get what you do and will be able to support you in finding work. So branding should begin now, even if it has no impact on this search. But think of your career as being longer term, and it will go a long way toward making the next search you do a lot easier. So if you like that information, come over to my website, which is thebiggamehunter.us. There's a lot more that you can watch, listen to, or read there that will help you find work more quickly. So let's come back to Marcus and pick up where we left off. So we were just now talking about some of the unnecessary things that people do with their resumes. that sabotage their search and frankly make them look foolish.
Correct.
What other sorts of things do people do that hurt themselves?
Well, initially, most of the time you're going to be doing a phone or a Skype interview. And the number of times I've gotten feedback on a phone interview and the person did not move forward because they, A, were talking on a train platform. I'm just using that as an example of they were talking in a noisy environment or on a bad connection. If you know you're going to have a phone interview, make sure you have a solid connection without planes flying over. Another thing that people will do is they will overuse ums, you knows, and likes. They will use a lot of crutch words, and that makes you sound less intelligent. You ever notice that?
Less intelligent and unprepared as well.
Correct. When people try to get you to articulate your experience and your answers include, well, I was the reliability engineer and if you slow your speech down and eliminate the use of those words, you are going to sound much, much, much smarter. And finally,
I'm going to pause it 1 second there, Marcus, and just say, folks, one of the best ways to practice, one of the best ways to improve how you speak under such circumstances is going to a Toastmasters meeting.
Absolutely.
Going to Toastmasters, I'll just speak from my own experience. They put you on the spot for extemporaneous speeches. Like, I'll give you an example. Marcus, Memorial Day weekend is a time where Americans take off and do lots of different things. When you think of Memorial Day weekend, what does that mean to you, Marcus? And the first time you hear your name is at the very end, so you're put on the spot to be able to speak. And they're counting the ums. There is a person who's counting ums there to make sure you become conscious of it. So it's a great venue to improve. I'm sorry for interrupting, Marcus.
Oh, no, I absolutely agree with you. And if you as a job seeker make a point to make yourself a better communicator, that will absolutely help your career. That is something that even if you have a PhD in chemical engineering, if you can better communicate your ideas, that will get you further faster.
And I will point out, for those of you who are not born in the United States, where you've already experienced people having difficulty understanding your oral communication, overcoming that obstacle and being a clearer speaker is going to serve your career, not just simply on this job search, but for every opportunity you're presented with at the firm that you join and on interviews to come. So practice speaking clearly and enunciating. Again, Toastmasters is a great place, but you can do that in any venue whatsoever.
Well, what are your thoughts on job seekers within certain skill sets putting their status to work in the United States on their resume? I know you do a lot of software developers.
Right. So my preference is that they do so. I know their preference is not to do so, in the hope that maybe this client of mine, who I've clearly said, they will not do a visa transfer. They only want people with the legal right to work, that they will suddenly, upon seeing their resume, will suddenly go, we're going to change our policy. We don't really, this person's background is so impressive. Up until this point, we've said no, but now because of them, we're going to say yes. And they're not. So all I'll say is my preference is to know it. And when I have the idea that someone might not have I'm contacted by people with H-1B visas, and when I see someone who might be working in the U.S. under a visa, I'll drop them a quick note of reply to ask a number of questions, including what their visa status is, because I can't waste my time first playing phone tag with them to only discover they're not qualified by dint of their visa. Correct. What do you think, Marcus?
I absolutely think especially with software engineering and other types of like chemical engineering and mechanical engineering, if I was a software engineer, like my last name is kind of foreign, I would put the fact that I'm a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. I think it would save a tremendous amount of time. And when you're looking for a job, a lot of the success is based on increasing pass-through rates at different stages. So if you can increase your response rate by 7%, 10%, 12%, you're going to be a lot more successful in the long run. So I think putting your status at the top of your resume could only help your situation.
It does speed things up, and knowing that you're competing with others for these jobs, anything that creates speed for your candidacy serves you very well. So by all means, if someone is a U.S. citizen, if you have permanent residency, if you have an EAD, by all means include that. I have clients for whom a TN visa would not be an issue. So knowing that would be helpful as well. But if you're working with an H-1B visa, might as well tell us what your visa status is and how much time remains on it, include the first renewal as well, so that we know.
Right. Because if you can't work on a H-1B visa, it's wasting everyone's time. Now, once you get past the phone interview, here are a couple of things that I see where people sabotage themselves, and one of which is the number of people in 2015 who still get lost or are late for an interview because they got lost. I mean, have you still see this?
I don't get it. Like, they don't have Google Maps on their phone or MapQuest to help them get there.
Yeah, that's something that is, I'm always perplexed by that. When I get a call from my client saying, oh, your candidate was 30 minutes late because they got lost. And that is something, unless you are a fantastic candidate, that is a very, very hard hole to dig yourself out of. And make sure you clearly understand and you budget more than enough time to get to your job interview.
And I'm going to build on what you talked about, Marcus. If you are late like that, or any amount of time, it's important to acknowledge it. And just simply, because you're inconveniencing people and they deserve that courtesy. Imagine if this was on the other way around and you were waiting for a phone call from this firm and they were 30 minutes late. How would you feel? Wouldn't you expect an acknowledgement? Well, they do as well. So acknowledge it and just simply say, my cab got lost, or train was delayed, or whatever the circumstances were, and look sincere and humble, and you have a chance at moving past it. But not to acknowledge it, problem area for your candidacy. Please continue.
Another issue, within the interview, you're in the interview, you've arrived. Another thing that I consistently get negative feedback on is a lack of preparation or a lack of questions near the end. For example, people who did not research the company, the position, and they're not able to answer, why do you want this job? For example, when I was at Google, if you interviewed somebody and they said, why do you want to work here? And if you said the free food, that was a bad answer. or
I'm sorry, it's just hysterical to me.
Right. But that's fairly common. You get people who want to work at a particular company because of the perks, and that's not good. You should, prior to a phone interview, prior to an on-site interview, you need to do your research. And there is plenty of research. There's Glassdoor.com. You can look up news articles. You can look up the people you're interviewing with on LinkedIn. If there's any books written about the company that you're interviewing with, read them. Get a better sense of the market what the company is doing. That will always work in your favor. Now, almost every interview ends with, do you have any questions for me? And one of the negative things that I hear is when the person doesn't have any questions. Like, oh, no, because it shows a lack of interest and it shows a lack of background preparation.
What sort of questions do you think they should ask?
Well, you could ask what the career path for this position is. You could ask, what is the direction of this group? You can ask, what are the major challenges? I mean, there are a lot of different questions. I mean, it all depends on the position and the company.
One of my favorites is, let's say you hire me, and I come on board, and it's a year from now, and I haven't just done a good job. I've done a spectacular job. As a matter of fact, if it's not the best, it's one of the best performances in a role like this that you've ever seen. What would I have accomplished in that year that might cause you to write a review like that?
Well, that's a very good.
Thank you. To me, it gives you as a job hunter a sense of what their expectations are and whether they're reasonable or unreasonable. I'm sure most people I come into contact with don't want to be mediocre. They want to be exceptional, and you might as well know what exceptional means to that organization because it may be very different than that job description that you saw. So I always think that's a great question to ask, and then you might just simply ask about what they would want you to accomplish in the first 30, 60, and 90 days after coming on board.
Well, throughout the job search process, you want to be exceptional. From sending your resume not 100 times to not interviewing in a train tunnel to not getting lost to answer or asking good questions. Throughout the process, you want to be exceptional. Now, one last thing that comes to mind is when you have the interview, you email a thank you email, and you somehow screw that up. Somehow it's weirdly formatted, people's names are misspelled, there's just weird spelling errors. You need to make sure that thank you email is top notch and is not going to change somebody's mind in a negative way.
What sort of things should people put in that thank you letter in your mind?
Well, first off, they should get the actual people's names that they interviewed with, and then they should probably review their understanding of the position. They should re-establish some of the points made during the interview. And if there was any question that came up during the course of the interview they should probably address anything like that. Do you have anything?
I agree, as well as reinforce why you're a fit for the role. So for example, thank you so much for making time with me today to talk about such and such position. As I understand that you're looking for someone with such and such kind of background to do such and such. I had an opportunity to think about what we discussed, and I just want to reiterate my interest in the role, and that I think my background fits in a number of different ways, and then from there you can summarize some of the ways that it fits. And one of my favorites is at this point saying something to the effect of, we didn't cover this in the course of our conversation, and it may be relevant to you, and then you go into that extra thing that their questioning didn't unearth, that you think it would be helpful for them to know. Because you have to remember, folks, most interviewers are not particularly skillful at it. They may be able to do their job well, but that doesn't make them equipped to hire people well. So you almost have to spoon feed them in order to make sure that they know that you're qualified. And then you close out by saying, I look forward to hearing from you about the next step in the process. Maybe if you're feeling aggressive, do you mind if I call you next week if I haven't heard from anyone by then? And if you're not feeling aggressive, just drop that last line. Real simple. Marcus, is there anything else we need to cover in terms of some of the ways that people sabotage themselves in their search?
Well, one of the things that I just thought of is when you are writing your resume, here are a couple of things, is that often people will write their resume and they will simply take a job description of what they've been doing at each of their different positions, when in reality the focus should be on how they were exceptional at that role rather than simply a list of their duties.
And including metrics in there to demonstrate.
Absolutely. Any position you have can have metrics. I mean, obviously a sales position has metrics, but you need to clearly establish why you are an exceptional candidate, because if you simply list the duties of your role, that is not being exceptional. Now, another thing that people do that works against them is they simply, whenever they need a job, they simply go back to the last time they needed a job and take that resume file, and then they simply add in their new job. And sometimes when I call those Frankenstein resumes, because the resumes might actually have different formatting. They might have been written on different versions of Word, and they have the different fonts and all sorts of stuff. And they also might have outdated information. If you wrote a resume in 1997, writing something that said, I'm proficient in email would be a legitimate thing to do. But if you wrote that now, that would be weird, because you would assume everyone is a proficient in email, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to, sometimes you need to scrap your resume and completely rewrite it. I think paying somebody $100, $200 to rewrite your resume that's a professional resume writer is worth it if you're not a good writer. Not everyone who is a job seeker is an exceptional writer. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on paying somebody to write your resume?
Well, I critique resumes for people, and I do charge for it. So, folks, you can find out about that on my website. And I do believe it's appropriate to pay for resume writing, because, folks, you're amateurs at writing resumes. You may be professional at what you do, but you don't know, your way around the resume. Is it worth spending? I know people who charge much more than that, and than $100 or $200. Most of the resume writers I know are more expensive than that. And, folks, it pays to pay, because at the end of the day, their resume will be a good base resume from which you could tailor in order to target that resume for each situation that you apply for. So I'm a firm believer in paying for resumes. I don't do that. Like I said, I'll take a look at someone's resume and critique it. And again, you can find out about that at thebiggamehunter.us.
Perfect.
Marcus, thank you so much for making time. How can people find out about you and the work that you do?
Well, my name is Marcus Ronaldi. My website is marcusrinaldi.com, and it has links to my LinkedIn profile. Also, I can be found on Twitter at Hydra1970, HYDRA1970. Thank you very much for having me as a guest on your show, and hopefully this helps out some job seekers.
I'm sure it will, Marcus. Folks, we're going to be back next time with someone else to help you find work more quickly. If there's one thing that Marcus has pointed out, it affirms something that I've said on many other shows, and that is the skills needed to find a job are different than the skills needed to do a job. And as such, you need help in order to be able to find work. Because if you go it alone, you're going to have the impact of making mistakes from your lack of experience. I've got a lot of information and books and guides to job hunting available on my website. Again, thebiggamehunter.us. Come over and explore. And by the way, if you like today's show, go over to iTunes, leave a review of it, give us 5 stars, I hope. It'll help with other people discovering the show. And I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you have a great day. Take care, folks.
For more job search advice, visit Jeff's website at thebiggamehunter.us. That's thebiggamehunter.us.